Hey guys, how's it going? It is my different username here, and today we'll be taking a look at another classic rifle, one that not many people really know about, but is definitely intricate in its own regard, as it was used by the Russian Special Forces. And it happens to be one of my favorite guns to use in different types of video games as well. So here, we have the OTS-14 Groza Bullpup rifle made out of Lego. So, the OTS-14-1A01, or also known as the Groza, or in English Thunder, is the bullpup assault rifle developed by the Central Design Bureau for Sporting and Hunting Arms of Tula, Russia, and developed by Mr. Telesh and Lebedev in the early 1990s. This was a rifle specifically built to suit the needs for the Russian Special Forces, and they wanted a well-built CQB weapon that could handle urban warfare. The gun is also based off the AKS platform and was somewhat inspired by the Steyr AUG's design and accessibility. And this weapon definitely worked itself to be very accessible and has multiple different model types as well. And the one you see here on screen was the first developed model for the Groza, the 1A, but we'll touch more on that later on. As far as history goes, the first set of models were actually produced back in 1994 and were used during an anti-terrorist campaign in Chechnya back in 1999. Since then though, the gun has actually quite fallen off, and currently at this moment there is no production for this model being made at all, which is probably why it barely ever shows up in any type of media, that being any movies or video games or just really anything. Okay, now with the magazine out, we can cover the actual bullpup aspect of the gun. So, like you would expect with the OTS-14, it really just is a modern AK converted into a bullpup version. And you can even see where the trigger guard was switched out on the bottom. It's very odd holding it like this because there's just so much weight towards the back compared to the front that it really throws off its own balance. And I want to state that because of this being an AK build, I could have easily used the exact same design from my older AK-47 video, but I remember looking back at that design and not really being truly happy with the way I built it. So here is what I would call my next rendition of a current model AKM style dust cover. And this one was built within 5 studs of width, which at first I thought was kind of too wide honestly, but after actually building out the model and putting it on the rest of the gun, it turned out pretty well. I even gave it the ability to swivel out from the front end, just like the real gun. You would at first need to unhinge the stock and then swivel that out to the side so it makes enough clearance for the dust cover to move. And now from this point, we actually have access to the new bolt carrier and charging handle design for the gun. There were a lot of different ways I wanted to build this out, but I ended up going with this simple yet small design right here. And just like with my older AK, you actually cannot ride over the magazine while the safety is engaged. However, when it's taken off, it has no problem whatsoever clearing the bullet and shell in the magazine. Speaking of which, the fire selector lever was another part of this build that really fit with everything else. But I wasn't actually the one to come up with this design, and it was instead Admiral Plakbar, who actually makes a lot of amazing stuff, so please check out his builds. I'll even leave a link in the description to all his stuff down below. But I'll say this, the fire selector looks really nice, but unfortunately is more on the fragile end than I would like, and doesn't have any engagement at all with the trigger system whatsoever. But man, does it look great. The whole receiver just looks amazing, even with all the miscellaneous details on the side. And honestly, just a way more refined design that I'm truly proud of. And when we transition to the front of the gun, we have what used to be the handguard for the rifle, as well as the pistol grip on the bottom and carry handle on top. The pistol grip here is just like any other AK style grip that I've made in the past, with the upside down trigger guard assembly and everything. But I've actually slightly modified this AK style of grip by adjusting the top portion of it and also making it less blocky. I mean, it's still pretty blocky, but it's a lot better than what it used to be. Moving up, we can see more of the carry handle, as well as the sling mount point to the front of it, where this would actually connect back towards the stock area. And the sights on this gun are actually pretty interesting, and most people actually say that they don't like the sights whatsoever, which I really don't blame them because they actually do take up a huge proportion of your view when aiming down, but I personally think that they're super cool looking, part of the reason why I even built this gun. So, you guys have been probably wondering what the deal with the barrel area is, and technically this is the barrel end right here, But the gun was never really meant to be fired in this configuration. Instead, we actually have the option of 2 different muzzle devices that we can use in place of this barrel. Here we have the 0-1 foregrip for the OTS, and this foregrip is one of the most idealistic ways of actually firing this weapon. It provides 3 points of contact to the body, and it's even brick built as well, which was a very interesting decision for me to make. By the way, Admiral helped with this one too. Link down below. Okay, he did help me design the grip for this gun, this is true, but I actually did create some modifications for it to make it a lot more sturdier than what he had originally designed. As you can see here, I probably wouldn't be trying to lift it up horizontally, of course, but it could definitely handle a lot of weight, and that's really good actually when it comes to holding this with 2 hands, especially with all that weight in the back. It really keeps everything in line and in balance. And the other option besides the foregrip that we have is the addition of the 0-2 suppressor for the OTS. And this suppressor is rated for the 7.62 by 39mm ammo, and it does actually help in suppressing the weapon very slightly, but still isn't even actually considered hearing safe. Here we have the weapon firing in normal configuration and with the suppressor attached. And this suppressor does share a lot of similarities to a PBS-1 suppressor. Not quite sure if it actually is one being used or not, or if they had their own special can for the OTS. And this was built starting within 5 studs of width. From that point transitions down to 4 studs, and then finally caps off at 3 studs at the very front of the can. And the suppressor is fairly long enough to actually help out with the imbalance of the rifle, but considering the weight in the back versus the weight of the can in the front, it is still a challenge to try to balance this rifle just from the one hand on the pistol grip. And since we were talking about the ammo for the gun, we might as well take a look at the magazine release and magazine for this. And this release mechanism is the same exact mechanism used from my LEGO AK-47 video, just somewhat changed up to meet the accommodations for the Bullpup version. And here is the recreation of what would be a typical steel magazine for the AKM series of rifles. Unfortunately, I didn't get any video footage of it on screen, but I did happen to have some pictures of me comparing this magazine to a real steel magazine that I just happen to have on standby. And the size and proportions are pretty much accurate except for the sloping of it. And the reason that sloping is off is to allow the addition of these jumper plates that you see here on the side, mimicking the ribs on the real magazine. I even added the back area to be 1 stud wide to simulate the fin on the real model. And overall, the magazine does look fairly decent. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but it definitely looks a lot better than my first attempt at making a magazine like this, where it was just completely flat. But did you know that there is another magazine that can be used on this rifle, technically? Here, we have the 9x39mm 20 round magazine for the Groza, and this is technically used for the Groza 4, which if anyone here has ever played Battlefield 4, will probably already know the difference between the 2 rifles. So this mag is slightly shorter, less slanted, and a lot easier to reload than the original 30 round steel mag, and even incorporates different side details as you can see here. And considering that this magazine holds what is 9x39mm, I try to make that more apparent by using different cone pieces for the bullets as seen right here. And I must say this though before I create any confusion, these rifles here are 2 completely different rifles. One is just chambered in 7.62 and feeds from 7.62 magazines, while the other is chambered for 9mm and specifically only feeds from these types of magazines. But the reason I didn't make any changes to my LEGO rifle itself is because the changes are so small that it wouldn't even be remotely noticeable in LEGO form to create. So that's why I'm able to essentially reload this gun with 2 different types of magazines loaded with 2 different types of ammo. So you guys have probably noticed that I mentioned 02 and 03 and are maybe a little confused by what that means. And it turns out that the OTS has an interesting way of identifying itself, and here is a list of what is defined by these numbers. With the Groza 4, however, there's actually a 04 variant of the gun, and here we have the GP30 grenade launcher for the OTS-14. And this grenade launcher is interesting in the way that it is mounted to the gun itself, where it essentially replaces the lever-styled trigger up front with a push-styled one instead, which is powered by an internal spring within the grip and not a rubber band system. But surprisingly, this configuration allows the use of the grenade launcher and the rifle, so how does it do this? Well, it turns out that it actually has a lot to do with the switch here on the left side of the gun. Here we have some lettering on the side to help understand, where these are actually read in Russian and AB would be pronounced like av, or short for automat, and these letters right here are something like a gr, probably short for granada, possibly. I'm actually not 100% sure. Also, by the way, this is editing me talking, which I'm gonna just say this right now. I thought of using an L piece for this, but decided to go with the J instead because when you turn the L upside down, it actually points in the wrong direction. So I went with the J because that part of the letter actually points in the right direction. Although, I actually was just messing around with the letters and I realized I could have turned it to the side like so. Sure, it's a little off, but honestly, it looks pretty close to the original letters, and mad regret. Look, I already filmed this portion of the video, and I'm not willing to refilm all this stuff just for one letter, so I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to become lazy about this one thing. And my only real reference to how this fire selector could work is this strange video I found talking about some history and facts on the OTS. So yeah, with my assumption, I'm basically guessing that when the lever is pointed / covering the letters, that is what the setting for the rifle is placed on, making this a very useful tool to actually use in the battlefield, which is kind of too bad because it never made it to that level. Taking a closer look at the grenade launcher, you can see that the launcher actually holds a lot of miscellaneous details on the sides here, as well as having a much longer barrel for the OTS, which probably adds stabilization to the launcher portion. And the way this weapon is fired is by simply sliding a 40mm grenade down the barrel, where it will click into place and be ready to fire from that point. On top of the barrel, we actually can find some of the sights for the launcher, which could easily swivel up into place. And I believe the way to aim this is by simply aligning the points of the grenade sight to align with the points of the carry handle. And on the side here, we can find an extractor for the launcher, and this device gives the user the ability to disarm the launcher when not in use by simply popping the grenade back out of the gun. At least, this is how it would work on the real one. But on my model, the extractor actually couldn't reach the inside area of the launcher, so I just made the front area able to be pulled down by a plate piece where the friction can be taken off of the grenade and just slide out. And that is essentially the 04 configuration for the Groza 4. So, overall, I must say, this weapon really did a lot to try and become the ultimate universal weapon for the Russian forces, but somehow didn't prevail, which I just think is crazy. And also, I want to point out that there is one part of this gun that I wasn't able to make, and that is the scope for the Groza, because there was always meant to be a sniper variant for the gun, but because of the way I built out the barrel on the grenade launcher, I actually ended up running out of bracket pieces and couldn't build the physical scope, so that's a shame. But for the most part, I am still pretty happy with this weapon. I had a lot of fun designing it, having some people help me design parts of it, and having the ability to make this video for you guys. The only next part that I could hope for is that you all have enjoyed this weapon and the video. So if you guys want the ability to make this gun as well as the scope for it that wasn't featured in this video, you can click the link down below to download the file and build it out yourself. Also, if you guys want to see me make more LEGO creations just like this in the future, definitely make sure to subscribe, and also like, favorite, and comment if you have enjoyed the video. And, as always, thanks for watching. Also, check out my Twitch. That's how I stream this gun on Twitch.